Okay, I'm
Yeah,
not
so
sure.
I just realized there was a technical issue, and although I could hear you, nobody else could.
Ah,
Um, so
so,
I'm afraid we're gonna have to restart.
okay,
And
there we,
let me do my intro again. Hello,
oh, okay.
my name is
Oh, we're really restarting from the
yes.
start. Okay.
Hello, my name is Philip Shepherd. I'm the Secretary General of IPRA. And sorry about the delay in our starting there. The software we're using has changed slightly, and so we're getting used to the new technicals. Our speaker today is Bahr Thompson, and has worked all over the world for companies like Interbrand and others. And she's an expert at brand citizenship, and that's today what we're going to be hearing all about. Pose your questions at any time in the Q&A tab, and I will take those towards the end of the session. So now, Anne, back to you, and please
Okay.
restart your session. Sorry for the
Yeah,
delay.
so no, that's okay. So so I want to apologize to everyone in advance if I sound a little repetitive. It's because I feel repetitive, even though it isn't for you, because I already went through 3 slides. So anyhow, good morning again. I'm sitting in New York, and it's 7 a.m. So in a few moments, there may be some sun streaking through here. For anyone else who's on this side of the ocean, good morning as well. For those of you that run a little further east, good afternoon. And for those of you that are far east, perhaps good evening. Everybody's in different places, so we're in all different time zones, which is what makes this really exciting. Clearly, it's a pleasure for me to be here with you today. We're meeting in an extraordinary moment in history. We're at a time of significant global and societal shifts. And with this, the challenges brands face are rapidly evolving alongside the zeitgeist. One problem you've dealt with one day is a different problem the next day. And with this, what's being demanded of us, both personally and professionally, is much more than most of us have ever anticipated. Today, I'd like to speak with you about a model called Brand Citizenship that emerged unsolicited in research and was built from the grassroots up, not in a classroom, not in a boardroom, not at a client's roundtable, but literally from what people told us from the grassroots up, that at its heart reflects this shift in the zeitgeist and represents an evolution in our definition of value creation. Brand citizenship is about a shift from focusing solely on transactional relationships that are growing increasingly common with AI and digital analytics driving so many decisions, to building more meaningful connections that are rooted in genuine purpose, that cultivate trust, and that embrace shared responsibility. So let's begin. As I said, we're in the midst of this seminal moment. And in the face of environmental changes, economic fluctuations, political conflicts, and more, we as brand leaders, as marketing communicators, hold the power to shape the cultural narratives of today and tomorrow. There we go. As the lines between profit and purpose are blurring, and dependent upon where you are in the world, they're blurred slightly differently. Societal well-being is increasingly being linked to business success. I'm sure you all have conversations about this. If you're on the client side in your meetings, if you're on the agency side when you're sitting with clients. As this is happening, the role brands are playing is undergoing an equally profound transformation. Even in moments when sentiment appears to be waning or going backwards, in terms of how we operate, there is no going backwards. The question is no longer if brands should engage with societal issues, but rather how they should navigate this new terrain. Trust and value creation come from aligning your purpose and your words with your actions and behaviors. I don't know what's going on, sorry. Lots of messages coming through when everything's turned off, so apologies. And so let's go backwards. Let me start over again because I just got derailed with all these beeps. So trust and value creation come from aligning purpose and words with actions and behaviors. And the way to do this first started coming into view for me way before it was trendy. It was unsolicited, as I mentioned, through research that began in 2011, 13 years ago. UK about brands, and it didn't have to do with corporate citizenship. It didn't have to do with social responsibility. It was a general trend study. And what we learned in this trend study with 6,000 people was, despite the resources that companies were investing in social responsibility and sustainability at that time, good corporate citizenship resonated most when it was tied in some ways to people's day-to-day routines or addressed their individual hopes for themselves alongside those for society or the planet. So we often talk about this, and I'll introduce the me to we continuum as me versus we. And the reality is, the world is not about me versus we. It's about balancing me and we. If you think about governments and political theories, whenever theories get too far to me, people push back to we. And whenever politics get too close to we, they push back to me. So it's this balance of serving the individual, and for businesses with a through line of purpose, how beginning with serving the individual stretches across to better the community, better the collective. Over more than 3 years, and it's 3 years of a series of both qualitative and quantitative studies repeated, and then another 2 years of additional studies that were done for clients. With more than 6,000 people, people consistently were telling us that their unease with the world we're living in has been leading to this new me form of corporate citizenship, not necessarily solely a we form. And to illustrate that really quickly, the thing that became a red flag in research that was, as I said, general trend research, not about corporate citizenship, although there was one question about which brands behave most responsibly. And as those of you who are involved with research studies know, generally when those questions come up or when you're reading the studies, there's a set group of companies people are analyzing. We had an open-ended question that people could tell us any company they wanted to that was exhibiting good corporate citizenship and exhibiting bad corporate citizenship. And we had a technical definition of corporate citizenship. And between the US and the UK in the very first study, the additional studies went out a little further. The brand that came up surprised us. We expected Apple to be the brand everyone said exhibited the most brand leadership. But we did not expect Apple to come up as the best corporate citizen. Now, I don't know if anyone can think back to 2011, but in 2011, Apple was experiencing a bit of a PR crisis. There was a whole issue with their chips and the efficacy around how their chips were being developed. So this came as a surprise. But when you read people's open-ended reasons as to why they chose Apple because of what it did for them. Apple helps me connect to people across the globe. Apple brings joy to me by giving me music 24/7. So this whole definition of how Apple was a good corporate citizen clearly was a red flag, which is what motivated me to invest a significant amount of time, effort, and money into deconstructing brand leadership from good citizenship and from favorite brands, which was a proxy for loyalty, to understand what was going on. And from this investigation, from the grassroots up, this model that I'm about to introduce you to emerged. Today, with both climate change and systemic social issues as existential threats, it starts becoming a little bit more clear how improving individual lives is evolving to be something bigger, something more personal to people. That said, I do want to say this is not a model to become a social enterprise or to become a nonprofit, an NGO, because if you're a business and you're net zero in your operations, supporting social causes, but not delivering on your promises to your customers, not cultivating trust through that very first important step, you're not going to be in business too long. So this isn't about a Pollyanna way of looking at things. This is about a practical way of businesses serving the individuals they serve, spanning out to serve the global community and the planet from a single purpose, and serve themselves and their investors by earning a profit. So let's review what all this actually means. Well, it clearly begins with the definition of the term itself, brand citizenship. For me, a brand is the human face of a business a product, or a service with which people form a personal relationship. And this relationship secures preference and loyalty, which ultimately secures profitability. And citizenship is the call to action for companies to become active participants in society. Most companies have been active participants in society over time, but a lot of it has not been transparent. It's been through donating to political campaigns, sometimes through foundations that are not necessarily fully associated with the company. So it's not that companies haven't been actively participating, but they haven't necessarily connected it through with a through line. So brand citizenship guides brands to lead with purpose by navigating some inherent tensions that exist in this balancing of me and we. It navigates meeting personal desires while embracing collective responsibilities, leading with vision while staying vulnerable to people's immediate demands and needs, acting courageously by standing alongside their principles at all times, and simultaneously, in doing so, being held accountable to customers, employees, investors, relationships in the supply chain, wider stakeholders, and today you have to also include society and the planet as your wider stakeholders. As I mentioned, importantly, brand citizenship didn't emerge because I was seeking it. It emerged because of what people were telling us. When the model first came about, and if anyone's seen any of the many things I've written or read my book about the model, it's presented more in a linear fashion. And even that was an advancement over one stage beforehand. Initially, when we started doing the research, it looked like you had to start to service people as a me brand, and to become considered a good citizen, move out to we, and end up as a brand of stage 5, which I'll get into in a moment, of contribution. What we learned over time as we continued to do the research was that in terms of your positioning, in terms of your value proposition, you could be strategically positioned in people's minds as a brand at any one of these stages. And as long as you glided back and forth and embraced all 5 steps, you were thought of as a good brand citizen, or a good citizen, frankly, was how people defined it. This always seemed a little bit strange to me because in my mind, community and contribution also contributed to trust. Trust wasn't solely your value proposition based on your product and services. It's a wider value proposition as well. During the pandemic, it became very clear that this actually was a circular journey, not a linear one that just kept going back and forth, but a circle in which each stage built upon the next and brought you back to cultivating a greater sense of trust through embracing all these steps. The loop from me to we is a continuous cycle of engagement. Brands are invited to start anywhere along this continuum, and as they deepen their commitments, they circle back to further strengthen trust, provided that they're aligning internal and external actions with a single purpose, not doing things in a scattered manner. And purpose is a filter for how you determine what you're doing at each stage. So how do the 5 stages work? And normally this goes around in an animation, but because I have to present on a PDF, you have to watch everything in a single slide for a little while. So I apologize for that. But trust, as I mentioned, is the foundation of brand citizenship. As someone who has worked as both in PR firms and advertising agencies, and ultimately as a global brand strategist running all the consulting businesses for Interbrand before I went on my own, trust was always thought of as the end game. What we learned is trust is the starting point. Trust is built through 5 things: clarity of who you are, being able to communicate clearly who you are; reliability, in other words, delivering what you say consistently; sincerity, speaking from the heart. We talk about authenticity, and people recognize that authentic stories can somewhat be curated. So they want to feel that you're speaking from the heart. Reciprocity is give to give, not only to get. And so much of data analytics, much of loyalty programs are actually based upon, we'll give you this, but you have to give us that back. And people resented that. They want reciprocity that's a little bit more about them solely, and active listening. I do want to say each of these stages could be a whole day lecture in and of itself. So I'm going to skim over things. And if you want to learn more in depth, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, read my book, read any of my posts on my website, etc., and you can learn more. People said the element of personal identity and trust is people want brands to mirror their values. And we saw this as early as 2011. I know there's a lot of research now that exhibits that, but this is not something new. Mine is enrichment. It's all about making daily routines more joyful and more manageable. Here's where brands elevate experiences, adding value and meaning. And through that value and meaning, they create personal connections that go beyond product or service itself. What's really interesting is the editor for my book, which is all about the development of this model in a friendly way, I have to say, not a research way, called me up one day and she said, I was questioning some of the things you had written, but I just had the most amazing experience. There's a product in the US called Mrs. Meyer's, and it's a lot of household cleaning things, and it's beautifully scented. They also have hand lotions and various things like that. And she said, my housekeeper, who came from Rio, had never been anywhere except Rio and the Boston area where my editor lived, came in one day with her little supply kit, and she had a bottle of Mrs. Meyer's in there. And I profiled Mrs. Meyer's because it was a brand people in the US said enriched their lives. And she said it was like reading your book. She asked her housekeeper why she used Mrs. Meyer's, and her housekeeper said to her, "The lavender scent makes me feel like I've traveled to France." So something as simple as a detergent that's based upon bringing, cleaning to life in a different way and things can actually enrich people's lives, which is surprising. Ours is the pivot point. It's about responsibility, and it's a pivot point between being a me brand and a we brand. And people have often asked me, did you develop this, intentionally? No, this actually came out of a model. All these 5 steps came out of modeling data. And so it's fascinating that the pivot point between being a me brand and a we brand is responsibility. And this is all about much of the general things that we think of as corporate social responsibility. The important thing that emerged very early on in our research is something that we hear more and more about today, especially since the pandemic, is that people won't give your brand, they won't give your company credit for doing good in the environment, in social impact, if you're treating your employees poorly. You think of companies in the US, I'll label Amazon and Walmart, and they have had shadows over them for many years that have prevented their doing good efforts from being recognized and enhancing their reputation, at least among real people, not necessarily amongst winning awards among specialists. But people think of them as bad employers. And because of that, any other good things they're doing, they don't get credit for. It doesn't help enhance their reputation or loyalty to the brand. Us is about more than online communities. When I say community, people often think of online communities. It's about uniting people through belonging and shared identity. Here, brands are connectors. They bring people together around common values and causes. If you think of Dove, I've always thought Dove could help heal the world by bringing women together across the globe over shared challenges they have. And they're doing that in the way they do their advertising. But wouldn't it be great if they built a bigger community and had little circles that brought people together? There's so much in community that we have yet to leverage that I think offers huge opportunity for brands when it comes to developing loyalty and building real engagement. The other thing that falls into community also is things like the Forest Stewardship Council or Toilet Coalition and similar type industry organizations. Community is also about bringing companies together that care about and are addressing the same issues. We is contribution, and it's all about making individuals, people feel bigger than they are on their own simply by association. So if you work for a company that is considered a good citizen, If you buy products from a brand that people identify as a good product, as embracing environmental responsibility, social responsibility, etc., people feel good about this. It's very easy to look at we and contribution as solely activist brands like the British cosmetic company Lush or Ben and Jerry's, but you don't have to be an activist brand to contribute. And I'm going to give you some examples now. We're going to walk through 6 examples that run across the globe, assuming I have time to go through all 6, where you'll see that it's not only about activism, but you could also be an ally or an advocate. And as long as you're doing it in a consistent manner that stems from your purpose, you will get credit for that and will help you. So let's look at the model quickly for 6 brands across the globe. And the first is Almarai. And I don't know who's familiar with Almarai or not, but it's a Saudi brand. Almarai actually means green pastures in English. And when I discovered that, the brand actually, you get a warmer feeling to it because it's the world's largest integrated dairy foods company. It was founded in 1977, and as I mentioned, it's headquartered in Saudi and Riyadh. And Almarai is dedicated to providing high-quality, nutritious food and beverages, and they support health and well-being across the Middle East. They are known for their strong commitment to sustainability, community power, and product excellence. And in this way, they exhibit good brand citizenship from building trust with customers through nutrition and contributing to community health. So you see a through line. Trust begins with their value proposition and delivering quality and consistency. But as I said before, it's reinforced through its other actions, especially through community and we. When you consider Mine, they have a product that enriches people's lives called Sure Grow Junior. And there's a parallel one to it, Sure Grow Junior Fiber, that's about fiber. And clearly Junior indicates that this is about helping children. It's about providing balanced nutrition to tailoring children's growth needs, which for parents, this simplifies their routine by offering convenient, reliable option rather than having to think about which foods they need to balance and put on the table to ensure their children's healthy development. So this Sure Grow Junior is about enriching lives through empowering families with accessible, nutrient-rich solutions. So you see how it's not only about outside initiatives or campaigns, it's about the products in and of themselves. Ours, Almarai is focused on their employee development. So most of their efforts are tied to different SDGs. And one example on how they're behaving responsibly is in supporting Goal 5, gender equality. They're focused on developing women in leadership, both through a training academy as well as a driving school, which in Saudi Arabia is a big step up and putting yourself as a very strong ally and advocate for women. Us, for them, is they've taken this notion of health and they tie health to sports because sports are all about well-being. So how do you stretch what sits at the center of what you're about into another area rather than just picking a cause that you're excited about, that your CEO is excited about, that some executive manager is excited about? Think about how your causes tie to this and start building community. And sports are all about building community. And as a result of this, they support multiple sports efforts. One of the ones that really exhibits community is something called 6 Years of Walking, which is all about promoting walking in the community, which is about bringing people together. And simultaneously, it's about promoting the healthiness of walking. And as many people have on their Apple Watches or whatever, on steps. And we is all about various programs. One that we can highlight here that's all about contributing and bettering people, bettering the world, is through their Dairy and Food Polytechnic Academy. They enhance employability of 400 students annually, empowering them to work within the skills, with skills that are effective for the food industry. So who else falls into this? Well, here's a completely different brand. Lego. Denmark's Lego is far more than a toy company, and I'm sure many, if not all of you, have at some point played with a brick or bought bricks for a child that you know. Lego is wholly committed to creating a future where play is purposeful and sustainable alongside being fun. They're all about ensuring that we all believe we're each creative from the time we're young, and that we can each be a creator. And through building trust with families to make a lasting impact on global education, to embrace creativity, which is something that's often fading from education, Lego is committed to their purpose. As I said, they begin with me about ensuring every child knows they're creative, a creator from early on, and that's through their products, clearly. For mine, Enriching Lives, they have something called the Smart Dash, which is about bringing children together to explore robotics and programming in a fun way, empowering children to have more than just building with bricks, and I don't want to undermine that, but this empowers them to imagine possibilities that are embodied through play and inspiring lifelong curiosity in the tech sector effectively. Ours, Lego has been recognized 2 years in a row by RepTrak as the most responsible company. They have an ambitious sustainability plan that extends from materials to production, and I encourage you to read it if you don't know much about them. For us, Lego's Rebuild the World campaign invites people to envision a more inclusive, creative world by asking, what would you build to make the world a better place? So it brings people together all based on this question, and it fosters a community-centered activity on creativity and inclusivity that runs not only with children, but across people of all ages. And then the Lego Foundation, as you'll see in many of these examples, I've focused on the foundation because it's an easy way for people to start thinking about we, although we goes so much further. As I said, community and we have so much we can still leverage off of. But the Lego Foundation, as I mentioned, invests millions in global education. It's involved with Save the Children. It's involved with UNICEF. They work with underprivileged children, children that are marginalized, to shape the future of education worldwide and help ensure every child believes they can be creative and embrace play, even in situations where it may be hard to believe you can have fun and play. So from Lego, we move to Latin America, and we're going to bounce all over the world, to Natura. You may know Natura. It is the largest independent consultant. It has the largest independent consultancy sales force in the world. It's rooted from the 1960s when it was founded. It has been rooted in an idea that beauty should both uplift people and the planet. Very early on in this space. It's also one of the largest B Corps, and they integrate brand citizenship into every facet of the business. It's a beauty brand that fosters well-being, respect, and environmental stewardship in the most meaningful and impactful way. When we start with me, their core philosophy as the Natura brand, Natura also owns Avon. They have also previously owned Aesop, which is an Australian brand, as well as The Body Shop, but both of those were sold off in last year in 2023. But the Natura brand itself, its philosophy since the inception was Ben Estar Bem, and forgive me to anyone who speaks Portuguese, because I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. But what it means is well-being well, or well-being in harmony. And this encapsulates how it's behaved from the start. It encapsulates its dedication to customer trust, its commitment to authentic well-being, and its commitment to authentic well-being in harmony with a healthy planet, with biodiversity. Their Ecos line is a great example of enrichment for mine. It connects users to the richness of the Amazonian biodiversity. The product line is designed to share the story of rainforest and different communities in the Amazon that protect it, giving users a meaningful sense of connection to the planet and some of the most vital systems that sustain us as they're using this product. So it's enriching their lives every time they put a cream on their face or their hands. For hours, as I mentioned, Natura is an amazing example brand citizenship, of sustainability, of well-being in a very big way. It has a 360-degree commitment to sustainability that's reflected across its supply chain, from sourcing packaging to how it treats its consultants. Their holistic approach to responsibility really does underscore the brand's dedication to well-being of both the people and planet, and clearly well-being of the company and profit. For us, since 1995, they've had something called Creare para Ver, which means believe to see. And it's a line of non-cosmetic products that fund local education programs by dedicating the proceeds of certain products that have indigenous designs and are non-cosmetic products. And they dedicate the proceeds of this to schools and teachers. This brings consumers together to feel like they're part of a community that's creating educational equity. And it's a community of people that share a value of supporting education. For we, their long-term commitment to carbon neutrality and conservation is preserving biodiversity in the Amazonian rainforest at a time when people are burning the forest and doing various things in there. By addressing environmental challenges from the start, Natura's contribution goes well beyond profit, and they've pledged to protect the natural world, and in doing so, they inspire others who know them to do the same. Now we hop from Latin America up to San Francisco to Airbnb, which was founded by two students in San Francisco. And I'm not sure if you know the story, but there was a conference and hotels were sold out, and these two students needed money. So they decided they would rent out their place and give people an experience in San Francisco who are going to this conference, not a conference experience, but offer them an experience to feel like they're home. So you can start seeing that dual purpose of Airbnb and the dual value proposition for the people who go to Airbnb homes and the people who rent their homes. What they're saying is to us is that people can and should feel home wherever they go, and that our physical homes are assets we can earn money from. And through this, they build trust and empower hosts to contribute more to communities. They showcase hospitality that connects and uplifts people around the world. They have a very strong commitment to community standards that prioritizes trust and respect for both the hosts and the guests. And if anyone here has been involved in Airbnb, I'm sure you're familiar with this. They have a consistent promise of safety and inclusivity. And this is a very foundational element of trust that begins with their products and services. And without that trust and inclusivity, people wouldn't feel at home when traveling, which is what their value proposition is. For mine, they have something called the Experiences Program, which empowers local hosts to share their culture, their heritage, and passions with travel. You can also see how this embraces a little bit of bringing community and start creating a community. And whether it's cooking classes in Tuscany to hikes in the Andes, these experiences enrich travel for the people who are the travelers, and also offer the hosts a chance to introduce people to their world and do that while they're earning a livelihood through renting their home. Airbnb collaborates with cities worldwide to address complex issues like housing and tourism. They actively participate with local governments to address regulatory issues. I'm sure you've heard in New York, there's been a whole thing with Airbnb having to change how it operates because of New York wanting more revenue and have the homes officially registered. So there's been some issues there, but they're trying to work in collaboration with the government to find a way to balance this problem. They demonstrate their commitment to being a responsible business by engaging in solutions that balance business and community needs. For us, they have an amazing open homes program that mobilizes hosts to provide free shelter to people who've been affected by natural disasters and other crises. This has created a powerful network of community support that's turned their platform into a resource for people in need to immediate crisis. And then following that, for we, which builds on that, the Airbnb.org, their foundation, or their nonprofit, actually, more so than their foundation, extends its mission of belonging by providing housing to refugees and asylum seekers. And through this, they make a lasting impact and demonstrate how the concept of home can be a source of hope and safety to people. DBS, we have 2 more to go. I'm going to go through these quickly, but give you a sense. DBS began as a development bank. I couldn't do this without at least having one financial services in here. And it began as a development bank, as I said, with its mission to support growth in Singapore. And today, its purpose-driven approach that began through this starting point builds trust and creates a positive impact across Asia through its commitment to safety, empowerment, and sustainability. DBS is all about focusing on helping people live better, and it's been established as a trustworthy institution and named the safest bank in Asia by Global Finance for over a decade. So that's a huge commitment and stamp of approval on them being a trustworthy bank. For mine, they have a NAV hub, NAV hub, that provides free financial literacy workshops that empowers young adults to make informed decisions. When you think about how other banks do this, many banks have, over the past 10 years, started adding apps and things to help people manage their finances, which is both a way to build trust and enrich lives by providing practical skills for financial well-being. I'm not sure if what's happened? Hello? Am I here? Philip, can you hear me? Okay, I don't know if I'm here. I don't know what to do. Oh, you can hear me. Thank you, Gina. Sorry, I can't, everything went blank on my computer and we've been having some internet problems, so I apologize. Well, I'll jump in quickly because we're nearly at the end and I know we need to leave some time for questions. But as I started saying, a lot of banks, in terms of enriching lives, have started to add in these apps that enable people to start managing financial services. There's a bank in the US that's now merged with another bank called SunTrust, which actually did research that exhibited how strongly insecure people are, or how insecure people are when it comes to managing their own finances. And they were one of the first banks that actually went out and created a way to help people start feeling more secure. And they expanded that out in a similar way to DBS, to the community. DBS transparently for hours reports on its green initiatives. It sets measurable goals for sustainable finance. As many companies, it has a pledge to achieve net zero operations, but it does have a long-term commitment to sustainability that is very trustworthy and people believe they will be acting on. They strengthen community ties and focus collective engagement by fostering a culture of giving back. Employees engage in community service, so they tie this notion of treating employees well to the notion of bringing them into the community. They have a People of Purpose program, which pays volunteer time and resources and helps employees to feel like they're active members within their community and bring them closer and bring the bank ultimately closer to the community. And they have a focus they tie contribution to their business, which is interesting. And other brands do this as well. But their focus on financing renewable energy projects across Asia exemplifies how financial institutions can support economic growth and contribute to their own profitability as well as the world by prioritizing economic resilience. And then last but not least is another dairy company, Amul, which actually is an acronym for Anand Milk Union Limited. It's an Indian company. But I think what's also interesting is the word Amul in Sanskrit means priceless or precious. So you start seeing how this notion of bringing things together, of bringing goodness into the community is priceless and precious. The brand is India's largest dairy cooperative, and it's built on the principles of empowering rural farmers. Everything they do in terms of their efforts on social responsibility and sustainability does have to do with empowering rural farmers and uplifting rural communities. They have wholesome dairy products that millions of Indian families use, and they are known for having a commitment to freshness, quality, and ethical sourcing. And this has made it a household name across India. Similar to Almarai, they have a product that helps with nutrition. It's Amul Pro. It's a malt-based milk additive that enhances the nutritional value of regular milk. So it boosts milk. It's something you add into milk, and it boosts the value of milk and nutrients, which, as I'm sure you know, for many people is very important because they don't have a full range of food that bring them nutrition in the same way we discussed before. The cooperative model is clearly about responsibility and community. So embedded within what they're about are these two notions. The cooperative model in terms of hours and responsibility helps small farmers have a fair and steady livelihood. They're known for fair pricing to their farmers. They train them and they support them. So this ultimately is helping rural communities across India achieve economic independence. And then as a co-op, they're all about us, as I said, community. They engage the wider population and cultivate a sense of belonging through various local events that bring people together. One of their fun ones that brings people together, which is tied to them through the connector of sustainability, is a clean fuel car rally, not necessarily tied to dairy and their products, but tied to their inherent values on sustainability. And then we, as part of uplifting to their rural communities, they have a foundation that contributes to public health services, which is clearly tied to nutrition and enrichment that comes from dairy. And they serve approximately 1.6 million people, over 680 villages in their region, Gujarat, in India, through public health services. So I will quickly tie up now and we can open to questions. And I do want to say I sincerely believe as brand leaders and communicators, we really do hold the power to shape the future of brands and of leadership that runs across civics and across communities and across helping the global stage and the world. Brands have the power to influence people, and in doing so, they change people's minds and behaviors, and we can really change and uplift the world. And brand citizenship is a model that embraces that. And whilst it has 5 steps, I personally like to think of it more as a guiding philosophy that redefines value beyond transactions. The challenges we're facing in the world today really call for genuine, authentic, not surface level campaigns of authenticity, but genuinely authentic, lasting relationships that are rooted and cultivated by trust and create value for both me and we. And with this, brand loyalty clearly goes beyond messaging and extending to two-way relationships with every person that interacts with your brand, regardless of whether you call them a customer, a consumer, an employee, an investor, a vendor. Every person that has a relationship or interacts with your brand should have a way to have an ongoing two-way relationship with you. When you balance personal collection with collective responsibility, you manage vulnerability with vision. So you bring those two inherent conflicts together. And just for a moment, step back and imagine the possibilities we could have in the world if people embrace the notion of brand citizenship, not as a checklist of, oh, I have to do this initiative, I have to do that initiative, but as a framework to have a through line for meaningful engagement. So as we move forward, as you sit at your desk today or tomorrow or the next day, think about transforming brands from being simply influencers of culture to trusted allies in building a better and more sustainable future for everyone, for all of us. Because together, we can move beyond business as usual. We can co-create value with our audiences in service of our collective well-being and sustaining the planet. And that's it. Thank you for your time, and apologies for all these little technical difficulties here.
And thank you very much for that. We kept on hearing you perfectly. It's just for some reason your video went down. So I have an opening question, really. So you've eloquently described these 5 points of analysis in terms of brand citizenship, and showed us where certain brands are in all of those 5 things. Now, is it the case that some brands are perhaps doing more in one of those 5 areas than others?
Absolutely.
Sort of a transformation that can take place, and that's a way of comparing different brands?
Absolutely. And I mean, that's where I say you can step onto this. And when it became a circle, it became even more, or when the research showed how it was building off itself. You know, when people talk about personal development, they often talk about a spiral that keeps building up. There's no reason that shouldn't also be the way we think about brand development and about cultivating loyalty and trust. So you step on at any one of these stages, and the stage that you may be heaviest toward is the one that actually aligns with your value proposition. So you think about a brand, Lush is a cosmetic brand that is across the globe to some degree. And Lush is known as an activist brand. So it started out as we, but if it didn't deliver products that actually also delivered, satisfying and efficacious cosmetic attributes, then they would fail. And you see certain brands that come out as social enterprises that don't deliver on their products and then don't end up sustaining themselves as businesses. So the idea is, yes, you can be at any one of these stages. And in my book, and normally how I go about doing this and presenting it is I actually show brands that are doing exactly what you're talking about, Philip, that really are embracing one step more so than the others. And then I give a
Right.
brief overview of how they do it. For some reason, in the past few weeks, I actually revised things based upon issues that were happening with clients, with discussions, that people really wanted to see more things across the whole spectrum. So I said, well, let me use this as the opportunity to show that. So that's why I didn't do it. But absolutely, and I'm very happy if anyone wants to know how to really ground yourself in any one step, to have a conversation with you about that.
Sure. Okay. The question about Airbnb, which I think was an interesting example, and from what we could see with your analysis, they part of their ethos was the host being part of the experience, and what I think is perhaps interesting is the way that Airbnb is developed, in that more and more you're seeing that the places available are apartments which are separate from the host. So does that mean there's a loss of control in brand citizenship, and is that something that brands need to consider?
So what I would say is the hosts were not, I think that's a literal way of saying the host is part of the experience. How the host can be part of the experience in an apartment that they offer where they're not is to have a booklet of interesting places to go, or my favorite places, or things like that. It doesn't actually have to physically be part of that, but
Mhm.
it's about how do you open your world to the person staying in your home so that they become part of your world and start seeing this town, this city, from a perspective not as a tourist but as someone who lives there. Because if and Philip, you've lived in multiple places. For anyone else, in this webinar who's lived in multiple places, you can visit a place, but you actually don't really know it until you live there. And so the idea is to try to bring some of that in. And if you have, as I said, every one of these stages, every one of these examples could be a whole day lecture in and of itself, not lecture, but a talk, a conversation, a workshop in and of itself. And Airbnb, the more I learn about them, the more fascinated I am by them. They're really, the depth of what they do and deliver is truly embedded in the organization. And I think that's the key thing, is to see it as how you embed it in the organization, in its culture and its operating principles and its values, not just as campaign efforts.
Yeah, indeed. So we have a question from Gina, I guess. What role do employees of companies engaged in corporate social responsibility have in building brand citizenship?
Well, I would say employees play a role in building anything in a company. A company doesn't exist without its employees. You know, we do speak about, and I speak about brand as a human face of a business, but it actually is a series of individual human faces that compose this business. And so the idea is, how does a company have its purpose resonate with individuals, even if the purpose isn't the same as that individual's purpose, to empower them to feel they can act? And I think part of the challenge is organizations often do this through dictates rather than creating boundaries that allow people to swim within those boundaries and do things that they believe are right, that fit in this. Develop the best organizations in this, empower their employees to come up with initiatives and things that deliver against this, from how they operate at their desk every day, whether it's at home or in the office, to how they then participate in volunteer activities or suggest ways to improve a supply chain. I think, you know, there's this tension now going on in the world between command and control and empowering employees. And one of my personal passions and a project I'm working on that stems from all this work, but is somewhat apart from it, although it is integrated simultaneously, is how we help every employee feel integral within themselves. So how are you coherent within yourself? Because you can't resonate with the company you're working with unless you feel comfortable within yourself first. So this notion of bringing humanness and humanness within purpose is essential to all this. And I think some of what's happened with purpose, which is the root of the through line for all these 5 steps, is it's become too mechanistic. It's you know, let's create our purpose statement and then let's check that box off, we're done, rather than making it something human that people can connect with.
Lovely. Well, I think on that note, it's a perfect moment to end. Thank you, Anne, for sharing those insights with us. I've worked in brands for a long time in a previous job, and I never quite seen the cycle explained so clearly as you have done with this chart and those examples. So thank you very much for that. The webinar has been recorded and will be up next week on our website, and will be around for a few months if you'd like to see it again, or tell your friends about it. We will be back next month, where we'll be hearing from South Africa on the 12th of December. So until then, to you who are listening and watching, thank you very much. And to Anne, especially to you, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.